Bliss by Charles O'Rear, the most viewed photograph in history. A rolling green hill under a perfect blue sky dotted with soft white clouds. No people, no buildings, no drama, just grass and sky. And yet, this image, known simply as Bliss, became the most viewed photograph in the history of human civilization. Billions of people stared at it every single day, not in a museum, not in a gallery, but on their computer screens. It was the default wallpaper of Windows XP. So how did a quiet meadow in Northern California end up inside hundreds of millions of homes and offices around the world? And who is the man behind the lens? Charles O'Rear was born in 1941 in Missouri, and from an early age he was drawn to storytelling through images. He studied journalism and eventually joined National Geographic as a staff photographer, one of the most prestigious positions in the world of photography. For over 2 decades, he traveled the globe, documenting cultures, landscapes, and human stories for the magazine's iconic pages. O'Rear wasn't just a technical photographer. He had an eye for the poetic, for light that felt alive, for landscapes that breathed. He photographed vineyards in the Napa Valley, which is where he eventually made his home. And it was on a drive through Sonoma County in January 1996 that everything came together in a single, unrepeatable moment. O'Rear was driving along Highway 121 in Sonoma County, California, heading to visit his girlfriend, who later became his wife. He looked out the window and saw something that stopped him. The hills were impossibly green. It had been a wet winter, and the grass was lush and vivid. The sky above was that deep, saturated California blue you sometimes get after a storm has swept through and cleared the air. The clouds hung just right. He pulled over. He set up his medium-format Mamiya RZ67 film camera. He took the shot. There was no elaborate setup, no team of assistants, no hours of waiting. The image was captured quickly, intuitively, the way great photographs often are, because the photographer had trained his eye over decades to recognize the decisive moment. What makes Bliss remarkable, technically, is what's not there. There is no digital manipulation, no color enhancement, no composite sky. In an era when we assume every beautiful photograph has been heavily edited, Bliss was shot on film and is essentially unretouched. The colors you see, that almost unreal emerald green, that saturated cobalt blue, were real. That was the hill. That was the sky. On that day, in that light, the world looked like that. O'Rear sold the image to Corby's, the stock photography agency owned at the time by Bill Gates himself. Microsoft licensed it for Windows XP, which launched in 2001. The exact price paid for the license has never been officially disclosed, but it is widely reported to be among the largest sums ever paid for a single photograph. O'Rear himself has hinted at figures that are extraordinary by any standard. Windows XP went on to become one of the best-selling operating systems of all time. At its peak, it was running on over 1 billion computers worldwide. Every one of those machines, unless the wallpaper was changed, displayed Bliss as its default desktop background. By some estimates, the image was seen by more human eyes than any other photograph ever taken, more than any war photograph, more than any portrait of a world leader, more than any iconic image from the history of photojournalism. It was democratized beauty, a green hill that sat quietly in the background while people wrote emails, typed reports, and browsed the early internet. Most people never thought much about it, but it was always there. The actual location, a hillside in Sonoma County near the town of Napa, still exists. Today it is part of a vineyard. The lush green meadow O'Rear photographed has been converted to wine grape cultivation. If you visit the spot today, you'll see rows of vines where that open, rolling pasture once stood. The moment captured in the photograph is gone. The world it showed no longer exists in quite that form. There's something bittersweet about that. The most viewed image of the natural world in history depicts a landscape that has since been altered by human activity. It's a quiet irony. O'Rear himself has reflected on the strange fate of that photograph. He didn't set out to make history. He pulled over on the side of a road because something beautiful caught his eye. Which is, when you think about it, exactly what photographers do. Bliss endures not because it is technically groundbreaking, or because it tells a complex story, or because it carries a political message. It endures because it is, quite simply, pleasant. It is the visual equivalent of a deep breath, a reminder that the world at its best can look like this, open, bright, calm, and alive. In a strange way, its placement on millions of computer screens may have made it the most subconsciously soothing image of the digital age. People sat in front of glowing screens in offices and cubicles, and somewhere in the background, a green hill waited, a little piece of the outside world, framed in glass. Charles O'Rear took one photograph on one January morning, and it ended up accompanying more people through their daily lives than almost any other image in history. That's not something you can plan. That's something that happens when skill, timing, and a little bit of luck all line up, just like the light on that California hillside on a clear day a long time ago. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, please subscribe and leave a comment below. What other works would you like to explore? See you next time.